The skin itself is the largest and most important organ in the integumentary system. Its weight in most adults is 20 pounds or more, accounting for about 15% of total body weight and making it the body's heaviest organ. The integumentary system includes both the skin and its appendages, which includes the hair, nails, and specialized sweat and oil-producing glands. In addition, a number of microscopic and highly specialized sense organs are found embedded in the skin. They permit the body to respond to pain, pressure, touch, and changes in temperature. The integumentary system is crucial to survival itself. Its primary function is protection. The skin protects underlying tissue against invasion by hordes of harmful bacteria, bars entry of most chemicals, and minimizes the changes of mechanical injury to underlying structures. In addition to its other functions, the human skin is an excellent thermoregulatory organ. Sweat glands secrete water through ducts that empty into the skin pores. When evaporating from the surface, water has a cooling effect. Sebaceous glands secretes oil that keeps the hair and skin pliable and waterproof. The secretion empty along the hair shaft. All your skin is covered with the hair except your palms and soles. Capillary beds below the surface can bring blood near the skin for cooling, or alternatively, shut down, directing blood away to deeper regions in order to conserve heat. Temperature sensing structures detect heat and cold, passing this information along to the brain for the proper response. Insulation is further provided by layers of fat, adipose tissue, below the skin. As you can see from the slide, the skin consists of two major layers, epidermis and dermis. The skin acts as a sophisticated sense organ because the layers of the skin, epidermis, dermis, and underlying layer are called hypodermis, which is not part of the skin, contains specialized sensory nerve structures that detect touch, surface temperature, and pain. The receptors are more concentrated on the tips of the fingers, lips, eyelids, nipples, and genital organs, which are most sensitive to touch. Consider that there is a bacteria called Mycobacterium leprae that likes cool areas of the human body, such as nose, eyelids, fingers, testes, some other skin areas that are cool. It grows in these areas, causing chronic infections in humans known as leprosy. It destroys the sensitive nerves of the infected individuals, and the skin surface of the people becomes insensitive. If not treated, some people with leprosy might die of secondary infections due to their insensitivity to the environment. Unknowingly, they inflict injury on themselves, opening themselves to all kinds of infections. So the loss of sensation can be lethal. As some reports shows, the number one reason why people with leprosy die is because of suicide. On the left side of this slide, you can see affected areas of the skin of person who is infected with Mycobacterium leprae. So the person has leprosy. And you can see the middle drawing of the bacterial cells of Mycobacterium leprae. As you could see under the microscope, they look like a number of slender rods. On the right side of the slide, you see a vector drawing of person who died of leprosy. As you can see, because of the infection, this person has no eyelids, no ears, no nose. That is known as a lion face. There are 206 bones found in the human skeleton. The skeleton in your body is the central framework. Without the skeleton, you will look like a worm or jellyfish. The vertebral column or backbone is the key of the vertebrate skeleton. It is segmented, more or less flexible, arch rod flanked by axial musculature to which the head is attached. It provides a protective bony tunnel for the spinal cord. And this is what we have in common with fish, birds, amphibians, reptiles, and mammals, the backbone. We all belong to the phylum Chordata, subphylum vertebrates. Each of the bone in your body is an individual organ with a specific functions. For example, let's take a look at the femur, a thigh bone. It is the longest and strongest bone in your body. Without it, you will not be able to stand and move. Your femur also supports lots of important muscles, tendons, ligaments, and parts of your circulatory system. The main function of the femur is a weight bearing and stability of gait. The smallest bone in your body is a stapes, but it has a very important function in your body. It conveys sound vibrations. So the vibrations can enter the inner ear. It generates waves in the fluid of the inner ear. Those waves are preceded into a neural data to be transmitted to the brain via nerves. Without this bone, you will be deaf. Your sternum breastbone, along with your ribs, works to protect the organs of your torso, such as heart, lungs, liver, and chest blood vessels. Sternum connects the ribs via costal cartilages. Your sternum also provides a connection point for your collarbone and most of your ribs. Sternum and ribs serve as an attachment point for many muscles and are active during respiration. Another important function of sternum and ribs, blood formation. This is where your blood is made. Perhaps you already noticed that we have endoskeleton, which is found inside protective covering of skin and muscles. If we had an exoskeleton, skeleton on outside, we would look like butterflies, beetles, or shrimp, or crayfish. Yes, all these guys have exoskeleton, skeleton on outside, not inside like we do. Our skeleton and skeleton of other mammals consist of 4 boxes. And that is cranium, spinal cord, thorax, and pelvis. Cranium or skull protects the brain. Vertebra, that is 33 individual interlocking bones, form spinal column. The spinal column protects spinal cord. The thorax, which composed of sternum and rib cage, protects heart, lungs, liver, and spleen. And here's another box called pelvis, or it is sort of an open box. It provides support for the intestines. It also contains the urinary bladder and reproductive organs. The cranium, spinal column, and thorax known as axial skeleton. In the human skeleton, axial skeleton consists of 80 bones, and it is composed of 6 parts: the skull and the ossicles of the middle ear, the hyoid bone, the thorax, sternum, and the vertebral column. On this slide, I only indicated the ossicles and hyoid bone. You all will be able to find here skull and sternum and vertebral column. That's not a problem. We talked about it already. The hyoid bone is located in the front of the neck, just below the lower jaw, carrying the weight of the tongue and playing a vital role in speech and swallowing. At the birth, the hyoid bone is made up of 3 unconnected bones, but over the time, these bones may or may not fuse to form a crescent-shaped structure. Bones outside of the axial skeleton are part of appendicular skeleton, from the Latin word meaning to hang upon. The shoulder blades, collarbone, arm, hip, and leg bones are part of the appendicular skeleton. These bones usually play a role in body movements. The axial skeleton, together with appendicular skeleton, form the complete human skeleton. The matrix of the bone is composed of organic minerals, of collagen, proteins, proteoglycans, and water, which provide flexibility, and inorganic phosphate and calcium, which provide firmness. Without the addition of mineral, bone would have properties similar to a rubber band. While without collagen, bone is brittle like chalk. Minerals thus straighten the bone, whereas collagen allows flexibility. In terms of microelements, composition of the bone is unique to each individual and depends on the places one is raised. On 2001, the torso of a young boy was discovered in the River Thames near Tower Bridge in central London. It seemed that the boy was a part of a religious sacrifice. Dubbed Adam by police officers, the unidentified remains belong to a black male around 4 to 8 years old. Having just torso of a child, police were not able to establish identity of the boy, so they turned to the scientists for help. Simply by the composition of the bone, scientists were able to trace the small village in Africa where the boy was born and raised. Many people got in trouble for human trafficking during this investigation. However, it took decades to find out what really happened. You can Google the story on the net if you are interested to know more about this. Bone matrix is organized into numerous structural units called Haversian systems. Haversian system is a structural and functional unit of a bone. Each circular and tube-like Haversian system is composed of multiple layers of calcified matrix arranged in layers resembling the rings of an onion. Each ring of a bone is called concentric lamella. In order to better remember the structure of Haversian system, let's make a drawing. When we draw certain structures, we remember them better. First, we're going to draw a blood vessel. Here it is. Easy thing to do. Now we're going to draw a ring of calcified matrix. Then we're going to draw another rings and one after another. And this is what we call concentric lamellae or concentric lamellae. Both pronunciations are correct. Note that AE represents a nominative plural case in Latin. Singular will be lamella, plural lamellae or lamellae. Bone cells called osteocytes are emerging in a heart matrix. Osteocytes have their own offices called lacunae or lacunae. Osteocytes give command what to do to other bone cells, such as osteoblast and osteoclast. Eventually, those cells mature and also become osteocytes, but they have to do a lot of manual work before this happens. But how osteocytes get their foot in their little offices? You see a tiny passageways or canals called canaliculi connect the lacunae with each other and with the central canal of each Haversian system. Central canal contains a blood vessel. Nutrients pass through the blood vessels in the Haversian canal through the canaliculi of the osteocytes. Now let's compare our drawing with actual picture of the bone tissue. Here on the left we have the picture, on the right is our drawing. I hope you recognize it. And indeed, everything in the picture is in our drawing. Look, there is a central canal. Here it is. Here is the blood vessel. Here we have lacunae, right? Little orifices. Actually, the word lacunae means little lake. But I think it's better to think of it as offices because osteocytes really do a lot of work in these offices. Now, what we have here also, you could see the concentric lamella. You see like onion-like ring structures. Here they are, one lamella, another, and another, one after another lamella. And here we see a beginning of another haversian system. And here's this another haversian system, right? So on the picture, we see about one full haversian system, right? And two of them just little parts of the other haversian system. They all like have actually four of them. One is right here, right? So this is like tube-like structures come one after another. If you want to emphasize that haversian system is tube-like structure, you might want to draw these two lines on the side of concentric lamellae that we draw. By the way, another name of haversian system is osteon. Perhaps on our first lecture I mentioned this, right? So don't get confused. Haversian system and osteon is the same thing. Here once more, let's take a look at our labeling. Lacunae, central canal, canaliculi. One of the bone function is the mineral storage. Think of a bone as a bank account where you deposit and withdraw bone tissue. During childhood and teenage years, new bone is added to the skeleton faster than old bone is removed. As a result, bone becomes larger, heavier, and denser. For most people, bone formation continues at a faster pace than removal until bone mass peaks during the third decade of life. After age 20, withdrawals can begin to exceed deposits. For many people, this bone loss can be prevented by continuing taking in calcium, vitamin D, and exercise, and by avoiding tobacco and excessive alcohol use. Osteoporosis develops when bone removal occurs too quickly, replacements occur too slowly, or both. Osteoporosis causes bones to become weak and brittle. So brittle that a fall or even mild stress such as bending over or coughing can cause a fracture. Osteoporosis-related fractures most commonly occur in the hip, wrist, or spine. You are more likely to develop osteoporosis if you did not reach your maximum peak bone mass during your bone building years. This is why if you started drinking and smoking before 20 years old, you might pay for this with sometimes life-threatening bone fractures when you become 50, 60, or 70. Another problem that some people have with the skeletal system is abnormal spinal curvatures. Scoliosis is a sideways curvature of the spine. While scoliosis can occur in people with conditions such as cerebral palsy and muscular dystrophy, the cause of mass childhood scoliosis is unknown. It can affect people of any age, from babies to adults, but most often starts in children aged 10 to 15. Scoliosis can improve with treatment, but it is not usually a sign of anything serious, and treatment is not always needed if it is mild. Signs of scoliosis include a visibly curved spine, leaning on one side, uneven shoulders, one shoulder or hip sticking out, the ribs sticking out on one side, and of course, as a result, clothes not fitting well. Kyphosis is an exaggerated forward rounding of the back. It can occur at any age, but is most common in older women. Age-related kyphosis is often due to weakness in the spinal bones that causes them to compress or crack. Other type of kyphosis can appear in infants or teens due to malfunction of spine or wedging of the spinal bones over time. Lordosis is excessive inward curvature of the spine. Lordosis may be associated with poor posture, congenital problems with the vertebrae, neuromuscular problems, back surgery, pelvis, or hip problem. So let me check now if you were able to follow me. What condition is this? What you see on a slide is a side view of the spine or vertebra. Kyphosis. This is kyphosis, of course. Now, what type of condition do you see now? What you see is the posterior view or back view of the spine or vertebra. We say posterior instead of saying back view, we say posterior view usually. So what is it? Scoliosis. This is a posterior view or back view of the spinal curve. This is, you correct, of course, if you say lordosis. This is a side view of the spinal curve. The skeletal system as a whole includes not only bones, but also related tissues such as cartilage, ligaments, and tendons. Together, they make up 20% of your total body weight. They provide the body with a rigid framework for support and protection. Every bone in the body, except one, connects to at least one other bone. In other words, every bone but one forms a joint with some other bones. Should I give you time to think which other bone that doesn't have connection with any other bones? The exception, of course, is the hyoid bone in the neck, to which the tongue anchors. Joints perform two functions. They hold our bones together securely, and at the same time, they make it possible for movements to occur between bones, between most of them, that is. Without joints, we could not move our arm, legs, or any other of our body parts. Our body would be, in short, be rigid, immobile hulks. Most of us probably never think about our joints unless something goes wrong with them and they do not function properly. Then their tremendous importance becomes painfully clear. Arthritis is the swelling and tenderness of one or more joints. The main symptoms of arthritis are joint pain and stiffness, which typically worsens with age. Now, question again, to review what we just said. What are the organs of the skeletal systems? Bones and joints, of course. What are the functions of the skeletal system? You're right if you say support, protection of soft tissue, mineral storage, blood formation, and transmitting sounds to the inner ear. That then covers the essential of the human skeleton. But we need not fear the dancing bones of Halloween, because bones cannot move unless muscles are attached to them. So let's take a look now at the contractile tissue that moves the vertebrate skeleton. We have about 600 muscles in our body. Each muscle is an individual organ and each has its own name. Deltoid muscle, bicep brachii, brachioradialis, flexor carpi radialis, peroneus longus, and so on. The purpose of these lectures, however, is not to make you memorize names of the muscles. If we did not have muscles in our body, we probably would look like sponges. Sponges are multicellular aquatic animals that do not have muscle tissue. A great deal is known about muscles, enough in fact to fill several books. One of the goals of this lecture is to introduce you to the different types of muscle tissue and to note some general facts about the structure and function of muscular system. The skeletal system is just a framework that cannot be moved without muscles. For example, when you move your leg, some skeletal muscles contract while others relax. These contractions and relaxations of the muscle move the bone in your leg. Skeletal muscles are connected to bone by a special form of connective tissue called tendons. When stimulated by nerve impulse, muscle tissue will shorten or contract. Meaningful movement of the body occurs when skeletal muscles contract because of the way muscles are attached to bones and the way bones articulate or join together with one another in joints. Skeletal muscles are made of individual fibers, not to be confused with dietary fiber. The word fiber in this case has nothing to do with the fiber we discussed previously. Fiber in this case is another word for skeletal muscle, not cellulose. As you can see from this microscope view, skeletal muscle fibers are multinucleated cells. Skeletal muscles are also called striated muscles because the muscle fibers have light and dark crossbands. They are also called voluntary muscles because we can choose when and how move them. We can go to gym and exercise to improve their performance, strength, shape, and appearance. We cannot increase number of muscle cells, but we can certainly increase the size of our muscle cells. Each skeletal muscle fiber itself filled with two kinds of a very thin and thread-like structures called thick and thin myofilaments. The thick myofilaments are formed from a protein called myosin, and the thin myofilaments are composed of the protein called actin. Think of the sarcomere as the basic functional or contractile unit of skeletal muscle. Recall that the Haversian system serves as the basic building blocks of the bone. The sarcomere serves that function in the skeletal muscle. The subatomic structure of sarcomere consists of numerous actin and myosin filaments arranged so that when viewed under the microscope, dark and light stripes or cross strati are seen. Here you can see relaxed and contracted sarcomere. Muscle become shorter when they contract. The protein filaments that make up the muscle fiber actually slide past each other. If the filaments slide towards each other, the muscle shortens or contracts. If the filaments slide away from each other, the muscle relaxes and returns to its normal length. Muscles are contract when they are stimulated by a nerve impulse. During the contraction process, energy obtained from ATP molecules enable the two types of myofilaments to slide towards each other and shorten the sarcomere and eventually the entire muscle. The explanation of the muscle contraction results from the movement of thick and thin filament towards one another is called the sliding filament theory. This theory now is accepted by most scientists as the best explanation of how muscles shorten. Non-striated or smooth muscle lacks the cross stripes or strati seen in skeletal muscle. Therefore, they are not striated. They have a smooth, even appearance when viewed through the microscope. Smooth muscle fibers are spindle-shaped, wide in the middle and tapped at both ends, somewhat like a football. And smooth muscles have a single nucleus. It is smooth muscles called involuntarily muscles because they normally do not have conscious control over its contractions, which means you cannot move your intestines the way you want consciously. Smooth or involuntary muscles form an important part of the blood vessel walls and of many hollow organs such as gut. Smooth muscles move food into and through the stomach and intestines and make a major contribution to the maintenance of normal blood pressure. Smooth muscles contract more slowly than does skeletal muscle. Cardiac muscle, as its name suggests, composes the bulk of the heart. The heart is the only organ made of cardiac muscle tissue. It pumps blood throughout the blood vessels. As you can see from the slide, cardiac muscle cells branch frequently. Heart muscle is striated, but not as clearly as skeletal muscle. Cardiac muscle is an involuntary muscle because we cannot consciously control its contractions. All of the muscle fibers in our heart contract at the same time. All of them relax at the same time. Contractions of cardiac muscle cell keep the blood circulating through its vessels. One of the interesting characteristics of cardiac muscles that they never get tired, unlike other muscles. The individual nucleated cells are separated by intercalated discs, which are areas where membranes are folded and tightly compressed and which easily transmit impulses. They are absent in other muscle cell types. The most impressive feature of cardiac muscle is its rhythmic beating. It begins early in the embryological development, long before the nerve connections have been formed. This first timorous fluttering sends blood throughout the embryo in this direction, and that since even the circulatory system has not yet been completed.